It's good to see you guys. Certainly, what I saw from the guys yesterday, I was impressed with by the energy and the connection that the unit played with. I thought they were really battling for one another, and it showed. I thought Randy Gregory's interception was the play that it might have captured that for me in such a good spot because of the energy on the sideline. I'm sure you guys felt that too. I was literally hundreds of feet away in the press box, and it felt like I was right there with him because of the energy that was there. And the interception was badass, there's no doubt about it, but I would say it might have been any cool play that he made, that the energy would have been there, just, you know, for him being out for 4 weeks, and the sideline went big for him. And we missed him, you know, for 4 games. So to have him back, it was a great welcome back moment. And so I thought that was one of the things I was certainly impressed with, about the energy the guys brought with. And going into it, we knew it was going to be a division game and battle hard and go down to the end, and it definitely did. So what I had hit with the guys earlier in the week was kind of 2 things: persistency and consistency, and having both of those. And so the persistent part was that us rolling in hard and playing the way and the style that we want, but we wanted to make consistent part of that. And how do we do that with less mistakes and still keep an aggressive edge to how you want to play, because you don't want to just be so wide open that you're making mistakes or missing tackles. So I was like, we can have both and do it correctly. And so that was really you know, kind of the message that we had for the week. But more than anything, man, I was just impressed by the energy and their connection to one another, and getting our chance to, you know, have a few takeaways go our way to give it back to the offense. So that was a big part of it. Man, are we back with the sun again? I love this. All right, next Monday, we are changing the venue.
On that interception by Randy, he called back to the New England game. I think he was referring to where cut blocks were a real emphasis in practice, and you were diving at guys with the helmet on and all that. To you, is that clinic type tape the way that he played that particular cut block?
We have some fun as coaches, because sometimes when the guys make some of these remarkable plays, you'll hear us say on the headset, "Man, good job, so-and-so," like AD or somebody, knowing like it had nothing to do with us. It was just, you know, ridiculous athleticism and making good plays. But I think what we try to do in those moments, whether it was like in that example of, you know, trying to cut a player, like we don't do that in practice. So we're trying to like simulate something to say, if you can get your, you know, defeat the cut block and get your hands up, you'll have a chance, you know, to tip a ball or to make a play. So that was kind of the genesis of, you know, where some of those drills took place. But at the end of the day, it was certainly, you know, the player making it. But yeah, that's in the individual, you know, time at practice. That's where you have to like try to create some drills for the guys. Hey, this moment's going to come up, and this is how we want you to handle it. Is it okay if I step back a bit? You guys okay with that? All right.
Usually, I mean, this time of year, football's a war of attrition, and you're usually trying to work through injuries. You're getting impact players back for the stretch run. Have you ever been in this position before where you're getting these key guys back late, and how does that build or even add to the momentum that you've established in their absence?
Well, I think, yeah, hopefully, you know, Dono, he's the next one to, you know, hopefully get back into the mix here. But I think what it does when you have this connection and there's some chemistry and momentum that goes along with that, the more that you play and you get reps and you're doing it at practice, it just tends to carry over into the game. So having that time together on the field, in the meeting rooms, you know, and certainly in the games is where it really comes to life. That's a big piece of it. And I don't know if there's been a team that I've been with that's had the guys coming back this time. Like you said, there's some times where you miss it, but having the advantage of the IR rules have changed. I think that's a big factor compared to where we've all covered the NFL for, you know, years now, where, remember, it was early on, it was like 1 player or 2 player and you'd fight it to go out. So the rules of the game and how the front office and Mike and all the guys have to navigate that's really been a factor in this, to have guys come back, and I think it's good for the league.
Going back to Randy's interception, I'm not sure where it was relative to that 2.3 seconds, but how much does that illustrate what you're trying to teach guys about the finish, both disengagement and, I mean, there are multiple steps to it.
Yeah, and there was. And so I think there has to be first a recognition, you know, of what's happening. And so that's his instincts to say, hey, a guy's trying to get me cut so they can throw over the top of my head. So the ability to defeat that and have, you know, all this length that he has to try to make the quarterback throw over him. Or, and I think DA had another hand up to, I don't know if he tipped it or they did it, but just having length, obviously, in moments like that help, because now the windows are bigger and you're able to, you know, affect some throws. So it's part of why we like, guys who have length out on the edges for pass rushing, and the tip balls are a factor in that, but it just helps in a lot of ways when you're out in space.
Offense has kind of been the identity of this franchise for a pretty good number of years now. How much do you think your defense is maybe changing that identity a little bit?
Well, I think one thing that I do know about our team, and I think we talk about phases a lot, offensive and defensive and special teams, but I think right now, and I've been on a lot of teams in my life, I told you at the time, I've been on, I think, over 70 in my life of different teams, and we all have 3 phases, but on this team right now, I don't really see it as that. I kind of see it as one phase because of the way the guys support and have one another's back. And so I think there's a whole crew of people on this team that, look out for one another. There's going to be games where one side's different than the other, and that's just how the matchups go. But at the end of it, I think that's kind of like what's been a pretty cool part of seeing this team grow together, not just seeing it as a defense had this or offense had this, but truly guys pushing one another and challenging one another to see if they can, get to their space and do what we do. So that's kind of been a cool part for me.
How rare is that among the 70 teams that you've been on, that it's not 3 sides, it's one side?
Yeah, I think you'll know when you have it based where you're at from the locker room first. And if you're connected there, that usually happens onto the field. And there's been a couple of examples like that where you just see not just a group of, this position group hanging out together or doing things together, but, a whole group of guys, and seeing, different people pop into meeting rooms who are on the other side of the ball. I had a good conversation about fire match coverage the other night with Schultz. And he's just a curious, person that wants to learn and grow. And so we might have spent 20 minutes together just talking about the technique of what someone does and, well, how would you beat it? And so those little moments across the ball from player to player or coach to coach, they happen a lot in our offense and in our team. Just this morning I was talking with a couple of the offensive coaches on a different concept, and I see players doing it with one another. So that all trickles down, from coaches doing it to players doing it, and that connection back and forth. That's a big piece, but not all teams have it, that's for sure. Because when you do have it, okay, this is something you got to savor. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Growing up, were you a fan of any of the New York football teams?
Absolutely, yeah. So growing up, for me, I grew up probably about 20 miles west of Manhattan, and so I grew up. Kind of my first love of football was in New Jersey and watching the Giants play, growing up. And so that was a team I followed as a kid, So growing up there, it's not a big college football area, in the Northeast. And so pro football, it's Jets and Giants and hoops and there's hockey. There's everything but college football kind of in that pocket. But that was my team growing up. LT was my favorite player. There's no doubt about it. Had the poster on the wall, the whole thing. So, yeah, he was the one. If you were a young kid coming up, their defense was pretty rugged back then, and I certainly admired Bill Parcells and their style and the attitude that the guys played with. But it was fun to be in a tough NFC East game of one that you'd watched, as a kid growing up all those years. And but it was cool. That's where my first love of the game came from.
Parsons can do something that LT did, be Rookie of the Year defensively and defensive Player of the Year?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know. I guess we'll have 4 more weeks to figure it out. But anytime you're talking about a guy who just changed the game so much, it's a cool thing. And so for Micah, we just want him to be the best version of himself. Like he plays in different positions than that. He's an outside linebacker some, a defensive end some, but he's also an inside linebacker more of the time where we blitz him from off the ball. So back then it was Harry Carson and Gary Reasons and others, and LT and Banks off the edges. So you knew where everybody was going to be most of the time. With this one, we try to put them in different spots and in different ways to find matchups. So it's a different game than it was, then. But for certainly he was my favorite player coming up.
On that note of Micah's usage, how much has your philosophy changed on the opportunities you want to give him now that your defensive line is regaining full strength? Because against the Chargers, it was kind of out of necessity, but he still was effective in his rushing opportunities.
I think I'll maybe even go back a minute just from some teaching that took place. So when I was at the Miami Dolphins, the defensive end there, who was he is a Hall of Fame player, Jason Taylor, was our right end. And you knew where he was going to be, but there was slides and chips and everything you could imagine to him. So lo and behold, David Bowens and Bonnie Holliday and Kevin Carter had some more opportunities because of that. And I think because of Randy and Micah and D-Law and others, sometimes if you're going to try to take one, there might be some advantages for someone else if that comes up. And so I think that's part of learning how to play together with one another and knowing that, hey, here's an overload to this side, and if they want to help to here, we got to make sure we attack over onto this side. So a little bit of, it's not cat and mouse, but not always deploying everyone in the same locations. Just to say, sometimes you want to see a quarterback be able to read a defense, after the ball snap. Is it too high? Is it one high? Is it man-to-man? Is it zone? I think you'd like to do that with the offensive line a little bit. So that's kind of how my vision of defense works, not just from the secondary and disguise, but also on the front end to say, how do you put these specific people in spots to say, is a back going to block this guy, or are they going to chip to help him? So I kind of look at it as like two kinds of different disguises, one with the front seven and another one with the secondary.
What are your impressions on how Mike has handled all this?
You know what? I think for a young guy, it would be challenging for all of us if we were put into that situation. Everybody, man, we love you, rubbing the back and saying all the great things. But here's what I love about him. I got a text this morning, what do we got this week? And so that tells me, that he's down for the challenge and what we got to get done. I said, hey, man, I'm still grading this game, so I'll get back to you. Give me a minute, okay? This is 9:30 in the morning. I'm like, hey, back that half up. So I'll get back to you. But I think that kind of attitude shows that he's willing to go, because it's not so easy to learn pass rush stunts and a blitz package at D end and linebacker. And so sometimes it takes us all the way till Saturday, and then we say, man, let's take this out. And sometimes for me, it takes a few weeks of practicing something till I would say it's game ready. And so certainly our package is not, what you saw just in some of the snaps with those three together. That's not all we have or all we will do, but I'm not going to go so far that the guys can't play fast and aggressive, because I think that's really when we're at our best. But missed tackles were down. That pleased me a bunch. I thought Jordan Lewis, was one that really played a good game. To have 3 missed tackles on a running back as valuable, I think, as Gibson's been to them and what he's done this year, that was a big piece of this, knowing what we could do. And quarterbacks who's athletic and can move, so they presented a lot of challenges. So that many few missed tackles, we worked hard on that part of it to make sure our leverage was right, our communication was right, and so I was pleased with the effort from the guys in that standpoint.
Earlier this season, you were anticipating what this defense would look like with Randy and D-Law and all those guys came back to join Mike. And what a championship defense looks like. Does this have a makings of a championship defense?
I think the versatility makes you think that there's new spaces we can get to. And so I'd say this is probably one of the most versatile groups that I've been around, where, we've got safeties that have different and unique things, linebackers have stuff, tackles that can move from inside to outside. So I love the versatility of it. And if we continue to make progress, then I say then we would have that opportunity. But we got a lot of work to do still as we're going. But I like where we're headed, and I like the versatility of the guys. It was good to get Neville back into it. So here's a guy who got hurt in our second exhibition game when we were at Arizona. It seems like so long ago right now, doesn't it? When you look back, but I could do the second or the third game. And so knowing he was going to make it back at some point, that was kind of the thing. And so being away for him, it wasn't where he wasn't in the meetings. So he made progress by having to watch, which isn't always as easy to do. But he saw other guys he watched Osa, he watched all these guys for 10, 11, 12 weeks. And so by the time he got ready and back into practice, I think he had real confidence what he could do in the system and in the defense. And I was certainly pleased with his first time out and his physicality. He looked like he had fresh legs and was ready to run. So we played, I think it ended up being 10 D linemen in the game. And so, we were going to bring every person, we had as hard as we could.
Did you think Washington was kind of targeting AB at all at the beginning of the game? And if so, what did you think of the way he responded?
That's a good question. I didn't necessarily feel it was, a specific matchup to go to. So I thought it was just kind of how it ended up playing out to go. At the end, he would like to say, and I'm sure you'll ask him, he'd like to think, okay, when I get my chances at some opportunities, I got to be able to nail those. And so that's what we talked about right after the game. But, good news is for him, the consistency part I thought is really spot on there again. And I thought the communication on the back end was the best we've had this year. And again, I was impressed by Jordan run fits, his aggressive nature to go. And it was just a lot of guys who made significant plays in the game. I think the D-line probably stole some of the spotlight based on, an interception and a touchdown. But at the end of it, this was a group that was really connected and made plays for one another. I thought that was, the thing I admired most about this performance. It was a warrior effort for sure, but it wasn't by one person. And to me, the best of the best do it as a whole group, and that's what was cool to see.
Micah and DeMarcus and Randy get a lot of the accolades, and rightfully so, but what are your thoughts on the free agent pickups that you've added? Watkins, Basham, KZ, Neal, I'm probably forgetting a couple in there, Curse, and how important they've been to what you guys have done to do.
They have been important. I think, in my mind, I think of it, there's about 18 starters, in different roles that we play guys. I'm inside, I'm outside, I'm a safety, I'm this. And then another, 4 or 5 or 6 that have roles on our team, some just on special teams, like a guy like C.J. Goodwin. And as you're getting into those roles and how we put people into different spots, I think the best part of our group is the whole pack, and the different things that a guy brings to the table. I'm a first, second down player. I play mostly on third downs. I'm more, whatever it might be, we kind of have some guys for that role. And I think that's important because as you get through an entire season, you don't play just one offense. There's a lot of offenses that you play. Some feature, big tight ends and extra tackles to come in, and some play wide out and as spread out as you could be. So having that kind of versatility to say, man, we're ready to get it on. However you want to come in and do that, like we're equipped to do that.
The interceptions obviously stand out with Trayvon Diggs, but outside of those, the kind of the splash plays that we all notice, just how do you think he's played this year overall?
Well, I think one, having ball skills like that is a rare, thing to see. So anytime you can turn the ball over, that's big. And sometimes it feels like every time it goes up and it goes into the neighborhood, you kind of hold your breath to say, all right, is this another one to go? But he's staying disciplined to not force it. And I think that's an easy thing to do. Can you get another one? You had a couple in a row. Can you get another one where maybe you force something that's not there? And I think he's been disciplined in that space, which is not always easy to do because you can press and try to get another one, and he's just really stayed in the moment. I've certainly been impressed by him on doing that.
Neville's sack, it seemed like quite the display of strength, and I'm sure put out technique, but what were your impressions of just that sort of interior push from him?
Well, I think that's probably, an example of why I like to rotate players. And so where we can be at our best at the end of the game. And so it wasn't at the end of the game per se on his, but having people that can just keep attacking at a similar speed to go, I thought that's, kind of showed that here's another guy who's fresh and ready to get rocking on his plays. I think he might have played 25 plays, but those ones that he was going. And so it was the next one and the next one. And that's when like the competition starts pushing for one of like, hey, get me back in there, somebody else just got one. And so that's kind of the fun part of the competition. But quite honestly, as a coach, I was happy to see us come back down into the end of the game moment. We had played well all the way until the end at New Orleans, and we let up a long score at the end. And I said, let's make sure when we get our moment to close the door, we can do that. And so lo and behold, we're ahead, and all of a sudden here's 3 minutes left in the game, and it's a one-score game, and can you go close it? And I think that was just, a cool moment to say, we're in this environment again. All right, now we're going to be able to go close it. And so doing that, it just gives you a lot of confidence that you've been in that fight, you've been in that space, and you're able to do it when the time comes. And we're going to be in a lot more of them, in the weeks ahead, that's for sure. All right, you guys have a good one. We'll see you next week.